So next topic is a StAX. StAX for Streaming API for XML. It's sort of the brand new API for parsing. So here we are going to compare pull parsing versus push parsing. And as I said, this is a brand new parsing technology, fixing the problems of StAX and DOM while taking advantage of the benefits of StAX and DOM. So you can think of StAX as sort of the combination of good things from StAX and DOM, as we are going to see in a few minutes. So here we are going to talk about what is and why we want to use StAX as opposed to StAX and DOM. And then we are going to see two different APIs that are supported through StAX. One is Iterator API, and the other one is a Cursor API. There is a slight difference, not much difference. Then we'll talk about StreamFilter API, and then we are going to see which one to use, Cursor or Iterator APIs, on what situations. So let's talk about the concept of pull parsing versus push parsing. So pull parsing is a parsing model in which application itself has a complete control. So application asks XML data, and that is basically what StAX is based on. On the other hand, push parsing is where StAX is based on. So push parsing is not the application, but the parser itself is pushing the data to the application. Okay, so pull parsing, as long as you actually get this part, this blue colored part, that's good enough. So in pull parsing, the client, meaning your application, only gets XML data when it explicitly asks for it. So this is, the application pulls the data from the parser. On the other hand, in push parsing, the parser sends the data whether or not the client is ready to use it at the time. So this is actually what the StAX does. StAX parser, it doesn't care whether your application is ready or not. It will just call the event handler to push the data. Okay, so this is actually the reason it's called the push model is because the parser is pushing the data to the application, regardless whether the application is ready to handle it or not. So advantages of pull parsing. Okay, so with the pull parsing, the client has the complete control. What that means is that the client, by the way, by client, I'm talking about client of the parsing. So we are talking about your application. Okay, the application have control in terms of it knows it can actually start, proceed, pause, and resume based on the need. Okay. By contrast, in push parsing, the parser controls the application thread. So parser will just push the data to the application through the callback. Okay. So the big advantage of pull parsing is it is the application who has the control of when to read data. Okay. So it can start, proceed, pause, and resume at any point that it sees the need. So this is a continuation of advantages of pull parsing. So pull clients, meaning the application, can read multiple documents at one time with a single thread. Because it can control when to read and when to pause, it can actually read multiple documents, okay, in a single thread. The pull parser, okay, your client application asks the StAX pull parser to filter out some elements that client is not interested in. Okay. On the other hand, in push parsing, by the way, whenever we say push parsing, we're talking about StAX. Okay, so whenever we say push parsing, we're talking about StAX. In StAX, you don't have a way of actually telling the parser that I don't want these particular elements. Okay, so you have to still receive it, and if you do not want it, then you have to discard it. Okay, so that is not as efficient as in StAX. In StAX, you can tell the parser passing the filter object, filter these elements so that I don't actually receive those things. Okay, next time I ask for the element. Okay, so it has more control in terms of filtering. Pull parsing is easier to use than DOM for writing out. Okay, so as we have seen in our DOM presentation, DOM APIs are very low level, okay, and very complex. It doesn't really reflect your application level APIs. Instead, it's actually reflecting the tree structure, like add a child and things like that, which has nothing to do with your application, right? Okay, so pull parsing APIs is actually providing a bit easier API than DOM. Okay. Okay, so what is and why StAX? So we actually talked about why we want to just StAX a bit over StAX and DOM, but here we're going to actually talk about it in more concrete detail. So let's talk about what is a StAX first. You know, StAX is a representation of pull parser. Okay, so it's a streaming as opposed to in-memory tree of DOM. Okay, so it's like it is streaming in the same sense like a StAX. Okay. So it is streaming as opposed to in-memory tree of DOM, Java, Java-based, event-driven, and pull parsing API as opposed to push parsing of StAX. Okay, I'm going to actually talk about event-driven things in a few minutes. Okay, so whenever you ask for an element, it is actually captured in event. So that's the reason it's called event-driven. Okay. Okay, but it's not like an event-driven, async event-driven like in StAX. Okay, for reading and writing XML documents. So this another difference of StAX from StAX is that it allows you to write XML document. Okay, so StAX enables you to create bidirectional XML parser that is fast, relatively easy to program, and has a light memory footprint. Okay, so if you actually see the benefits and the disadvantage of using StAX and DOM, basically what StAX is trying to do is to solve the problems of those drawbacks of StAX and DOM, yet try to provide features, compatible features of StAX and DOM. So that's basically what this bullet is all about. StAX is the latest API in JAX-P family, provides an alternative to StAX and DOM for developers looking to high-performance system filtering, processing, and modification, particularly with low memory. Okay, so it's a streaming, so it doesn't require a lot of memory like in DOM. Okay, it lets you write as well, unlike StAX. Okay, and it lets you do filtering. Okay, unlike the StAX. Okay, so basically you can think of StAX is a new API, new parser technology, fixing the problems of StAX and DOM while taking advantage of the features of StAX and DOM. Okay. Okay, so why StAX? So it supports a pull parsing, and because it's pull parser based, it gives parsing control to the programmer, meaning application. So it allows the application or programmer to ask for the next event. So again, whenever it asks for the next item to read, it will ask for it, and that is actually captured in the form of event. Okay. So StAX was created to address the limitations of StAX and DOM, as I mentioned in previous slide. So let's compare StAX against StAX. So StAX is a pull parsing, while StAX is push parsing. Okay. StAX enabled clients are generally easier to code than StAX clients. Okay. The one advantage we already talked about is filtering, right? Okay. StAX is bidirectional API, meaning it can both read and write XML document, unlike StAX. While StAX is read-only, and so another API is needed to write XML documents. So StAX does not support writing, while StAX does. So this is a comparison among the multiple parsing APIs, StAX, StAX, and DOM. We also have a track AX. That's actually transformation. Okay. So if you think about the API type, StAX is pull and streaming, while StAX is push and streaming. And DOM is in-memory tree, and translation is actually using DOM underneath. Okay, but it also supports XSLT rule, meaning style sheet. You can provide a style sheet to transform. Okay. In terms of ease of use, StAX is easier to use, while StAX is medium, and DOM is easier to use. Well, in terms of what you can do. Okay, the transix is medium. Okay. XPath compatibility. So in this case, DOM and transax is actually you can basically. I think this one should be only on this one. Okay. In terms of CPU and memory efficiency, so StAX has good memory usage, and StAX same thing, but the DOM depending on the size of the XML file, and same thing for TranAX, because again it's using DOM internally. In terms of forward only, so StAX forward only. Same thing as StAX. DOM, it doesn't have to be forward only. It can go back and forth. Same thing with this guy. Okay. Read XML, so they all read XML, and write XML. So the only thing that allows you to write is StAX, DOM, and TransAX. StAX does not support writing. And create, read, update, and delete. So only DOM lets you do that. Okay, so there are two types of APIs for supporting StAX. One is called the Iterator API, and it is more convenient than Cursor API, and it's easier to use than Cursor API. Cursor API is considered is fast and a bit low level than Iterator API. Okay, so Iterator API first, and then later on we are going to talk about Cursor APIs. So Iterator API represents XML document stream as a set of discrete event object. Okay, and again, this event object, you are going to pull this event object as a developer. So these events are pulled by the application, okay, instead of being pushed, and provided by the parser in the order in which they are read in the source XML document. So it is still reading XML document in stream format, stream fashion, okay, streaming fashion, okay, but it is the application who asked or who pulled this event. So these are the classes in Iterator API. So XML event, XML event reader, XML event writer. So these are the event types. So start document, start element, end element, characters and entity reference and things like that. So you can think of these are pretty much the same in SATs you have event handlers for each of this event, right? Okay, so it's the same deal as far as event is concerned, but here it is the application who asks for each of this event type, okay, rather than being pushed by the parser. Okay, so the XMLEventReader API. So this is for reading the XML document. So XMLEventReader interface extends Iterator, and it does have a very simple APIs. So you can get the next event, and this XML event could be start event, start element, or end element, start document, and things like that. And now you can actually has next. Okay, so basically you can check whether there is actually extra event being waited to be pulled. You can also pick. Okay, so this is actually retrieving one. This is just picking it, and this is one just checking it. Okay, so pig is basically returning the actual it actually returns the type of it, but it's not pulled yet. Okay, so the actual pulling happens on this. So this is the code. Okay, so here you get the first of all, you are going to create XML event reader object from the factory. Okay, so there is XML input factory object. from the factory object, we are going to create XMLEventReader object by calling create XMLEventReader. Then here you provide the name of the file, and then this is the actual code in which you are pulling the event. So here you can call hasNext as long as there is an event in waiting to be pulled. You can get it by calling next event, and you can you can actually see what type it is, and you can do whatever you want. Okay, so if it's an element, you might want to read attributes and things like that. Okay, so the next one is XMLEventWriter, okay, API. So as I said before, StAX lets you read as well as write. Okay, so here we just learned how to read using XMLEventReader. Now we are going to learn how we can write as well using XMLEventWriter. Okay, so StAX has writing APIs, and the XMLEventWriter class extends XMLEvent consumer interface, and so basically XMLEventWriter could actually act as a consumer which can consume events. Okay, so what you can do is that you can use XMLEventReader, and then you are going to immediately use that event passing XMLEventWriter. Make it possible to read XML document from one stream sequentially and simultaneously write to another system. Okay, you don't have to, but this is possible. Okay, so basically what you can do with XML Reader and XML Writer is that you read it and then you do something with it. Maybe you are going to change all text node to the uppercase or something like that, then you can actually write it using XMLEventWriter. So this is the XMLEventWriter interface. It has a flush method, close method, add method, and add attribute method. So these two methods are used for the writing an event and adding an attribute. So this is an example where we are reading it and then we are writing it in the same application. Okay. So this is the same code we have seen. We read the file. So this is the file that we want to read. Okay, and then we have event reader, XML event reader object, and we also create XML event writer object as well. And in this case, the place that we are going to write things out is the system.out stream object. Okay, and then basically we have a while loop. Okay, so in this while loop, we are going to read one by one, and then if what we want to do in this code is that if event type is characters, okay, then we want that write that characters. Okay, we also actually could be so this is an example of some kind of business logic. So here, if it is characters and everything else, we want to just write it back, write as it is. Okay, but if it is a characters, what we want to do is that we want to do some business logic execution. Okay, so in this case, this get characters event method is here, and in this case, what we want to do is that if there is a string of the first and last freedom, we want to change it to the current time. So whenever there is this string in the XML document, we want to just change it to something else. In this case, we are going to change it with current date and time. Okay. So it's very simple business logic. So the whole point is that we can read it, then we can perform some business logic, and then we can write it by using add method, and later on we can actually flush. This is where we are going to actually write into the output stream. Okay. All right. So we are going to do exercise 1 and 2. Okay. So let's take a look at exercise 1 and 2. So exercise 1 is playing around with event reader, read only, and exercise 2 we are going to in fact use both event reader and event writer. Okay, so again the code is provided. So basically you are going to just open the NetBeans project. So let's just open this to all the project from the StAX, JPA StAX here. and sample NetBeans. So open all this project, okay, because basically we are going to just play around each of these projects. So the one that we are going to play with is first event. Okay, so let's run this guy, right? Run it, and basically the output is going to be like this. Okay, so we basically reading it, and we just display the each node. Okay, so you can think of this one is, it's pretty much the same thing as we have seen in the StAX demo, StAX, the hands-on lab exercise, but this is actually done through the XML, XML reader, meaning pool parsing. Okay, so if you take a look at the code, again we are using the same XML file, book catalog file. Okay. And so this is the code. So we create XMLEventReader, okay, object, and then we call has next and has event, next event, okay, and then we just display each event type, okay, and we just keep doing it, okay. And you can also do context-sensitive Java documentation in NetBeans. So if you want to actually see Java documentation of XML event, let's see. So let's take a look at the source code, and let's see XMLEventReader. So right click it and show Java documentation. Then you should be able to see Java documentation of XML Reader. Okay, so this is a convenience when you're using an IDE, whether that is a NetBeans or Eclipse. Sometimes you want to see Java documentation of a particular class. So that is one exercise I'm going to ask you to do. Okay. All right. So that's Java documentation. And the exercise 2, here we are going to read and also write. Okay. And then what we want to do is when there is actually this, some string, we want to replace with the current date and time. Okay. So let's actually run read and write. Right click the project and run it, and this is the output. And again, yeah, so this in this case it just changed to current time, so December 10th 11:04 and Eastern time 2013. Okay, so this is pretty much the same code that we have seen. So we want to replace this string with the current date and time. So that's the same code that we have seen in the slide. Okay, so it's the same code, so I'm not going to really explain it here, except that again, this get new characters event is, we just replace. If there is a string like this, then we're going to just change it to current date and time. Okay, all right. I'm going to give you guys 10 minutes to try this exercise. Okay, so let's pause. Okay, so the next API is a cursor API. So this cursor API works pretty similar to Iterator API. Okay, let's see how that works. So if you see Iterator API, API is very convenient. Iterator style API is convenient and easy to use, but it involves some overhead. So parser needs to create an event object for you. Okay, so that when you retrieve the next item, that is actually captured as an event object. Okay, the cursor API is providing a bit low-level API. So for applications where high performance is paramount, you might want to use cursor-based API instead. So you are going to use what is called the XMLStreamReader, and then you are going to use next method that delivers integer value. So instead of returning event type, it will use integer value, and then you are going to compare that integer value, to see what node type it is. Okay. So it represents a cursor with which you can walk an XML document from beginning to the end, and the cursor can point to one thing at a time and always move forward, never backward, usually one info set element at a time. So as far as the operational model is concerned, it works exactly the same as Iterator API, okay, but it just gives you a little bit of lower level API. Okay, So let's talk about the XMLStreamReader. So it does provide XML StreamReader and XMLStreamWriter. Okay, so it includes accessor method for all possible information available from XML information model, including document encoding, element names, and attributes, and things like that. So we're going to actually see these XML reader methods in the following slide. XMLStreamWriter provides methods that correspond to start element and end element event types. So let's see how that works. So these are the methods that you can use in XML reader methods. So get name, get local name, get namespace URI, and things like that. Okay. So you have to actually call these things after you figure out what what that integer value get represent. Okay. So if it is in fact the text node, then you're going to call get text. So compared to Iterator API, it's you who do a bit more work. In the case of Iterator API, in a sense, the parser does these things, StAX parser does these things for you. Okay, so it's a matter of who's doing the work a bit more. The caveat: not all of the getter method work all the time. So for instance, if the cursor is positioned in an end tag, then you can get the name and namespace, but not the attribute of the not the attribute, because attribute is probably handled in opening element, opening tag, okay, or element text. If the cursor is positioned on a text node, then you can get the text, but not the name, namespace, prefix, or attributes. So text nodes just don't have these things. So basically, if you're calling getter method incorrectly, then means it will just return null. So this is the get event type method. So you are going to find out what is the event type by calling get event type. Okay. So to find out what kind of node the parser is currently positioned on, you can call get event type method, which returns one of these 17 int constants. Okay. And then you're going to call the next method, and returns integer code corresponding to the next parsing event. So it just returns integer code, and then you are going to figure out yourself what that integer code means. Okay, so this is the example code. So here we are going to read the file XML input source file as XMLStreamReader object. Okay. And here we are going to call next method to get the integer value. And then we are going to compare integer value, whether that represent end document or start document. So you have to actually figure out what that event is all about. Integer value, you are going to find out, whether that is the end document or start document, or start the end document or start element or end element, and things like that. And then you are going to do whatever you want to do. Okay. So optimized use of XMLStreamReader. Since the client application control the process, it is easy to write separate method to different elements. So for example, you can write one method that handles headers, one that handles image elements, one that handles tables, and things like that. So what it means is, as a programming model, programming practice, what you can do is, depending on the event type, okay, so you get the integer value, and then you check whether that is a start element, and then you are going to actually call different method that handles so in this case, we are going to call the process head, because this is, is actually the head element, and this is body element, and things like that. Okay, it's just the programming pattern, which is probably not critical. Okay, so that is the StreamReader. Now here we are going to learn how we can use a StreamWriter. So StreamWriter. So this is actually kind of nice to have. So as we are going to see, so StreamWriter has a start element, write end element, write characters, and then there are a bunch of other methods. So this is how you can write things out. Okay, so this is very convenient. It really provides ease of development. So if you're trying to create this XML fragment, Okay, let's say we have XML, and then we have root element of hello. Okay, and it does have so basically namespace, and then the another element called the hello world, and then it has the ending tag of hello. Okay. If you try to create this XML fragment in DOM, you have to actually create this hello element, then you have to create a child element, then you have to insert it, and characters has to be created as a text node and things like that. So, the writing XML with DOM APIs is going to be very complex. Now, if you're using the XMLStreamReader, this is what you're going to write. So you can see this is a lot more intuitive. So you get the StreamWriter object, and then you're going to say write start document, and write start element, write default namespace, write characters, write empty element, and write end element and document. So it's a lot more straightforward. There is no child structure APIs involved. Okay, so it provides a lot easier APIs to deal with in terms of writing out. Okay, compared to DOM. Okay, so so this is another example. So here, you're basically creating a document, and then we are going to create an element. Then we are going to add an attribute to the element. Then we are going to write characters, okay, for that greeting, and then we are going to end document. Again, with this very simple 5 lines of code, we should be able to write the XML document that representing a single element with the text. Okay. Again, if you try to do the same thing with DOM API, it's going to be a lot more complex. Okay, so we are going to do exercise 3 and 4. So let's take a look at the exercise 3 and 4. So here we are going to exercise the cursor and the API, which is the XMLStreamReader and XMLStreamWriter. That's all. Okay. So if you actually run this guy, this is what you're going to get. Okay. So here, this is the all namespaces, and then we actually basically writing things out. Okay. So let's run the cursor API, cursor application. So just run it, and this is what you should get. Okay. It's just representing a same XML document, but we actually have a namespace is kind of prefixed. Okay. All right. So if you take a look at the code, the important code is here. We have XML reader, and then when the XML stream reader is created, it's positioned at the start document event. Okay. So so we can assume the first time we actually call event type, it should be start document event. So we can just call print start document method, and then we are going to be in while loop. Okay, just going through, just getting the next one, and then these functions. So then we basically check the event type, and then we are going to actually do something about it. So if you actually take a look at the print start element here. Yeah, basically we just check whether that is the start document or not. If it is not, it will just pass it, then it goes to the next and things like that. It goes to the next. It basically this this is actually being passed as so XML event type. Yeah, so it gets the event type, and where is the event type in XML? Oh, okay, XML. Yeah, so then we actually call this print method, basically just checking the event type and do the things in relation to that event type. Okay, so as you can see, the code is pretty much kind of close to the Iterator API, but we just deal with a little bit of low-level APIs. Okay. That's cursor, and the exercise 4. This is a case that we are going to actually write things out. Okay, so XMLStreamWriter. Okay, so it basically, okay, so looks like it just run it, and it's going to actually create output.xml file. So if you actually go to the files and go to writer and output.xml file, so this is what gets created. All elements are explicitly in the XML namespace, and this is what gets created. Okay, so let me just delete this file one more time. Maybe this is from my previous execution. So there is no output XML file. Then I'm going to write it again. Okay, I'm going to run it again. Right. So now it actually creates the output.xml file. Okay. So in this case, we are basically using this XML writer XMLStreamReader object. Just write things out. Again, is a lot more straightforward than DOM API. So that's the benefit of using this API. Okay. All right. I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes to try this exercise. The last topic is filter. So as one of the advantages of using StAX was you can ask the parser to filter things out. Okay. So that you don't have to deal with unneeded event types or even the nodes. So for that purpose, it provides a StreamFilter class. So stream through the XML, only pay attention to the ones I care, so elements and namespace kind of thing. So basically StreamFilter is the class that you are going to provide the filtering logic. So you can filter anything you want. Okay. It provides ease of development in terms of writing your XML application. Performance, lower level filtering and stream dances lightly, quickly, and efficiently. So basically the stream filter is used by the parser to filter things out at the lower level. Okay, so the overhead of parsing XML document should be reduced. So this is the stream filter classes method accept. Okay, so you're going to actually call accept. And then you actually provide the reader object. Okay, so and then here this is the filtering code that you are going to provide. So this is an example. So if I want to accept only start element and end element events, and if I want to filter out everything else, basically there is accept method that receives the stream reader object. And here, this is the filtering logic. We just check whether that is the start element or end element. Everything else, we are going to say return false. Okay. If it is either start element or end element, then we return true. That means I want to have it. This is another example. So here we are basically even checking. So I'm only interested in the start element events. Okay. So if it is not, then I'm going to return false. Okay, and I also check particular namespace. So I'm actually checking whether it actually is my desired namespace or not. Okay, and so I'm actually doing two things. First I check whether that is a start element, and then whether that element contains the desired namespace. Okay. Okay, so I think one of the questions that was asked was, in our previous parse the exercise, the namespace. Yeah, I think I'm gonna respond by writing. Okay, so I'm gonna just move on. All right, so stream filter example results. So what gets displayed. Suppose in this case, it will just display only the starting element like book catalog, access book, and things like that. Okay, and check whether there is a namespace. So in this case, this one is ignore, and so basically it will just display the start element and the name, which is So this I think is a question: why is actually displaying this? So if you think about it, each element has a namespace, right? Okay, so this is in fact the namespace is basically URL. Okay, prefix just happen to be an alias. Okay, so when you actually display the whole thing in the form of a namespace aware the node element, then so it's actually displaying this namespace. Okay, because the prefix is just an alias. This is the real namespace. Okay. Okay, so that is exercise 5. So let's take a look at the. Let me actually finish up the presentation, and then I'll give you guys to finish the exercise 5. So one of the questions that was asked was, when to use cursor and when to use Iterator API. So we know that Iterator API is easier to use, but with a little bit more overhead, and cursor API is a little bit lower level API, but provides higher performance. So when StAX was designed many years ago, at the time the mobile devices were not really powerful enough. Okay, so when they want to have these APIs to be used on mobile devices, they want to actually provide an API that is extremely highly efficient. Okay, as efficient as possible. Okay, so that's the reason they actually come up with these two APIs. These days, probably not much of a big deal because mobile device is actually very powerful. So you can certainly use the Iterator API without a problem. Okay, so same application should be able to run on mobile devices and desktops and servers and things like that. But initially, the reason they come up with these two different levels of APIs is to provide low-level API that could be used in memory-constrained and CPU-constrained mobile devices. So recommendation is if you are programming on a memory-constrained environment like a Java ME and more efficient code, then you want to use Cursor API. If that's not the case, then you can use Iterator API. But I guess at this point, Iterator API is actually usable on all devices. In general, if you do not have a strong preferences of one way or the other, then use Iterator API. Alright, so what we have learned is what StAX was, why we want to use a StAX, and we actually covered Iterator APIs and Cursor APIs and also filter APIs. And we also talk about when to use what. Okay. Alright, so filter API is basically we filter things out. Okay, so if you run the filter application, and it will just display a bunch of it will just display the start element and end element. Okay, everything else will not be displayed. Okay. So if you take a look at the code, so this is the MyStreamFilter class. Okay, and so when you create the reader object, you are going to provide the filter object. Okay, and in terms of filter class, we should have accept method. So here, we are basically checking whether an element is a start element or end element. If the node is not one of these, we'll just return false. Okay, so very simple code. So I'll give you guys 4 minutes to finish this exercise, and we are going to move forward.